Mr. Jack Blackley, military soldier in understandings, left within the artificial continuation of life program. And Mr. Jack Blackley, in the artificial connection of the extension of life program, as it goes into for furthermore, is where Mr. Jack Blackley is living within permanent care. And Mr. Jack Blackley's permanent care is corporal major, major corporal, and injured, severely injured, pretty much just a head. They're like blown to pieces. And lucky enough, he was saved in the way of it, where they got him to a brain response unit and got him on, in the artificial life program I talk about, in the continuation of life for this fictitious story, because we wouldn't want anyone or anything to get in the way of certain things in life. And how Mr. Jack Blackley goes about it is, he's in a laboratory of sorts, and not many people know too much about it, but one thing leads to another, and how this story takes off into its own self and becomes a actual piece of understandings, like some kind of entertainment, is where one of the laboratory assistants, one of the doctors sort of people, he's talking to his son, and his son's doing the school work. You know what I mean? When he goes to look for a job, when he's leaving school. And his dad takes him to the laboratory and takes him in there, and they're getting around and he's starting to ask questions. And his dad feels pretty confident that he can trust his son. And he tells them about Mr. Jack Blackley. And he says Mr. Jack Blackley lives in the laboratory. He's hooked onto the computer system of artificial continuation, like a virtual velocifier, a virtual reality of sorts, where his life is a full continuation with certain demographics of excellence, where it's a programmed life. And he goes out of his way to tell him about how they continue it. And he's got land walkers. And he's got land walkers, see, and there's certain people in society that have connections to the laboratory where they can go about their business in actual civilization, and it assists Mr. Jack Blackley to get that relativity of understandings for the basis of the actual reality of the artificial reality from their upgrades, like they have upgrades themselves. Yet it be an oculus of their eyes or earpiece behind their ear or wherever. And to go into it to show how these people are super special and not much can really touch them in society for how much they assist people, like Mr. Jack Blackley from the military, and for furtherments in society to people that are in there. And he's telling me all about it. And he's very amazed, this young kid. He's very amazed that his dad's telling him all about Mr. Jack Blackley, right? Bear with me. Have a couple more sips of your drink, whatnot. Spark up a smoke, whatever. And Mr. Jack Blackley, none the wiser. All of a sudden, his life is now in jeopardy. Bum, bum, bum. His life is now in jeopardy because the laboratory assistant, so the doctor, has told his son, and his son, understandably, has made a mistake, where he is jaw-jabbing on some kind of ecstasy, a drug-fueled incarnation, as he takes it and, let's say the laboratory is like Lucas Heights nuclear reactor up in Menai, Sydney, Illawong. And from Nuclear Heights nuclear reactor, Lucas Heights nuclear reactor, mind you, going to for furthermore to say some of the nuclear research centres or the Royal Henry Brain Research Institute, in for furthermore to certain places which assist people like this. And let's just say some of the land walkers have been identified by certain organisations. And the little kid, the one that the laboratory assistant was telling, he's jaw-jabbing one night on the ecstasy to these Middle Eastern organised crime members. And he's telling them all the information while he's sitting there on the ecstasy, jaw-jabbing, thinking he's a real solid guy, telling them all this information. Secrets, mate, military secrets that should never be leaked to anyone. Absolute basis of intelligence. The kind of stuff you'd go down, never be seen on the day, like you'd never see the light of day again if you would even try and discuss it in the public eye. And so he's jaw-jabbing on the ecstasy, and he tells them how the land walker has a program in a processing unit hooked like an upgrade package, sort of like a robot, if I could say the least, like a robot. Artificial intelligence, like a Terminator, if you're familiar with the movie The Terminator. Actual artificial intelligence programs like the Terminator, if you can understand that much. And when it comes down to the basis of it, it's where it takes itself to where this little bastard jaw-jabbing on the ecstasy to these Middle Eastern organised crime members tries to work out a negotiation to say what's the information worth, how much drugs can he get for telling them about this. And he goes into it to where he says he knows where one of the land walkers are. And let's just call that land walker Adam. A-D-A-M. Adam. And he's going for the land walker Adam. And he says, we can take Adam. And that's just the Middle Eastern organised crime members speaking in like Arabic. They're like, 85 maniac and all this fucking weird shit. And they're like saying now they're wanting to take Adam for their Middle Eastern terrorist cell. A full terrorist cell here in Australia. In the way of it where they're formulated in backwaters of Western Sydney, to where the news media might call them some kind of assassins or something, but they're far from assassins. The little thuggery of their onslaught as they push it through. And anyway, let's just talk about how they're going to abduct Adam for their Middle Eastern organised crime terror cell in for furtherment to their agenda of their religious matters. Like the Bali bomber who's been released in the next month, who killed 88 Australians in Bali. The Bali bomber who built the bomb. He's been released next month. Killed 88 Australian members of the public. He just gets to walk free. They say he's a rehabilitated member of the community now. And in it for furtherment, we talk about how they think that Adam can propagate or appropriate some kind of visceral, like videography, where they think they can program it into him and make some kind of terror cell activity, like fake bombings and fake beheadings, to try and make themselves more intimidating to certain people of the society of the world, members of the public and officials of society and whatnot. And they talk about abducting him. So they negotiate with that little bastard to come out of the laboratory, and they give him, like, say, a bag of Mitsubishi ecstasies and, say, half a kilo of homemade rock cocaine, like, you know, with the petrol and the bleach, and it, like, crystallizes into the rock in the powder, and it turns into the rock formulation, or like the goey goo, that clear goey goo that they put the bleach and add the petrol or the methanol, and it turns into a crystallized hard crystal type fat, like an ice methamphetamine type, like a home brand version. Not really grade A drugs coming out of, say, sophisticated laboratories, to say the least. Not really the kind of eye-openers that you would even worry about. And when it comes down to it, they pay him off and they get the fucking detail and find out where this Adam guy is. And one night, this Adam guy's taking it on, and he's only a young bloke. He's not even really that wise onto the situation of what's up with him. He doesn't really understand how he's connected to the laboratory or Jack Blackley, or he's so important as a land walker. He's a bit of a special victims unit. And these Middle Eastern organised crime members target in on him. And they set it up that he goes to a party, and at the party he gets injected with snake venom, like out of a taipan. And they inject him with snake venom out of a taipan, and it cuts off his respiratory system. But just before it cuts off his respiratory system, the guy's trying to start regurgitation, because he thinks his drink is poisoned, but it's not. It's an injection of snake venom. So he's got the drink, and he's trying to guzzle all this water out of the tap to start vomiting, because he's dry heaving from some kind of anaphylactic shock from the snake venom. And these Middle Eastern organised crime syndicate members working in this outlaw gang, as they want to put it into their splinter terrorist cell to try and incarnate some kind of videography where they think everyone's just going to sit back with micro SD cards or DVDs for the rest of eternity and watch their pathetic fucking shit. And we go into it, right? And they take him on a joyride. They abduct him from the party, and they take him on a joyride, right? This is a good part of the story. This is where they take him to a laboratory. Now, these Middle Eastern organised crime members, they don't have a laboratory. So they take him to a triad laboratory, like a Japanese dragon den. And a Japanese dragon den for a look back in the way of it, and to start the understandings to hook him up to make him their own processing unit. And because the triads and all that, like 14K and all the rest of the triads around, they're pretty good like that when it comes to money. They don't really give a fuck about life. Like, they will kill you. But when it comes down to it, the Middle Eastern organised crime members, they fucked up. Because it comes down to this Adam, and Adam's connected to the triads. He's connected with 14K. He's connected with the Japanese Yakuza. He's already operative with all them. That's probably the hardest part that they didn't understand. Because they rocked up to the laboratory. They'd organised, right? They organised it at the laboratory that they were going to turn up with someone. No names mentioned type situation. Like, yeah, we'll turn up, get it done. Like, absolute drug fiend fucked up cunts. Yeah, we'll get it done. Big time drugs, yeah. So they turn up there with Adam, and the triad takes one look at him. And the triad goes, I know this man. Why have you brought this man to this laboratory? What the fuck do you think you're doing? And the triad, he says that internally, right? In the movie we're making. He says that internally. Is this for like future reference for other people to take notations from? He says that internally. He's like, what the fuck? I know this man. And he says, okay, we take him in. We'll get him hooked up. You've hit him with the taipan venom. He's definitely dead. He's still got brain activity, yeah? Still got, because all they need is the brain activity. So they don't give a fuck about his mortal body. They don't care if, like, just festers up and dies. They were talking about cutting his head off. to hook him into a box and walk around like they're carrying a backpack with a human head inside, hooked to a processing unit. And the triad says, okay, we got him hooked up because he cares about this Adam. So he knows they've already wasted a life. They wasted a life of him by hitting him with this snake venom, because there's no way back from that. The guy's already dying. So the triad, he hooks him up as best as he can to give him the goodness of life, to continue his future. And long story short, he says, let me make a phone call so we can get the full arrangements and have you walk out of here with everything. Everything. These little thug wannabes are about to learn what happens when you fuck with certain organisations. This is where the Middle Eastern Sydney organised crime member, he never understood what 14K triads and Japanese Yakuza and Vietnamese 5D and the way it goes around society that they get up to in the world of the den, say the dragon den. He shows them, understand this. They don't get the gift to walk out. As Mr. Adam is now hooked onto the system, he come onto it that the triad takes out every single member that turned up that night with them and did reflective, retractive, the full understandings of their memory, reflection, extraction, and took it from them to find out their mum, their dad, their uncle, their auntie, their brother, their sister. Go through them like a book. Organise them, catalogue them, to catalogue the people who fucked with Adam and try to take him into a dragon den. This is one of them things now where society doesn't really understand what's happening, and they're a bit confused as to why people's body parts are turning up in public toilets. Why bodies are floating down the eastern coast of Australia, hooked within suitcases. And it goes into for furthermore where the triad hooks on the Middle Eastern organised crime members, and this is where it gets interesting. This is where it gets very interesting. Because one of the things is chemical extraction. One thing the brain is good for is chemicals. Certain chemicals that keep people in the extension of life, as it goes back to Mr. Jack Blackley, who Mr. Adam was working with. And now it's not just chemicals for Mr. Jack Blackley, which Adam could have provided for him, being a land walker. It's now chemical extraction from the Middle Eastern organised crime syndicate members. We'll just call them all Eastern, Middle Eastern, Eastern. We'll just call them all Eastern, as they try to walk around as big shots. We'll just call them all Eastern, as the full dragon den gets together tonight to come for them and their families. And what we talk about now goes into a bit of secrecy. This one goes into a bit of secrecy. This is where the story gets a bit interesting to Mr. Jack Blackley and Mr. Adam. See, Mr. Jack Blackley, he's wise enough to know, as a land walker, could be taken by anyone. So he talks to Mr. Adam. This is Mr. Jack Blackley talking to Mr. Adam. And this is Adam who's taken. And he says, all right, mate. So, you've learned something about life. You were injured, correct? Runs him on a basis detail flashback of his own memoirs. Gives him the lowdown onto how it acts into his actuation, and says about his life to where he wouldn't have made it in life without the assistance package which he actually received. And Mr. Jack Blackley explains this as a military, in that a corporal major, and he says, now we've got new job files to take on. Understand this? This is where the job files get very interesting. This is where you're not just leaving school to start your career as a labourer for the rest of your life. This is where you come and join a secret society. A secret society that takes care of problems, like we speak of this Middle Eastern organised crime syndicate, who tried to take Adam in the first place. Certain people like that around the world, and certain other things like corrupt officials. And if you can understand situations, if I was to explain like a little understanding, it's like the Bourne Identity with Jason Bourne, which you might be familiar with some of the discs. It might give you a bit of understanding as to where we're going this basis. And maybe a bit of a retractive flashback to where this story takes a little bit of interesting leap as it goes into for furthermore, where his new basis of understandings is his new job file. To where he has the gift to re-enter society, as well as go back to the laboratory to offload and be in there within a certain calibre of understandings. Maybe not as so far gone as Mr. Jack Blackley, who went out on a limb to help him out, but to where it is, to where he comes into it and starts his new career path. Similar story to like Jason Bourne, the Bourne Identity, but this one doesn't have the amnesia. This one goes back into kill shots, love bites, heart attacks, natural causes, suicides. Certain things like skull fucking someone in the cemetery, and certain other ways to make someone understand they fuck with the wrong people, to where it goes into the basis to what we talk about. So in the way of it, as I speak of this story, it gets very interesting to where he leads a very empowered life, to where he takes off from this and become a multinational of types, in the way of travelling expertise and like going the world and whatnot. So this story is the basis of where it's at. And in the way of it, that's just how it is. A little bit of a Australian kicker to what happens when you fuck with the wrong people and they were already waiting. So in the bio, right? In the bio, when you flip the back of the case or it comes onto TV and it reads about what the story is about, it says Adam. Within the basis of Adam, joining forces of understandings of the furtherment, a full rendition of succession for what it takes to become a professional yada, 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 pretty much writes itself. Won't get too far into it. People get a bit excited about me stories. They smoke the chiba and they just inject the drugs. And like here's me just telling the story naked on a Sunday night around this campfire, mate. So this is my story about Mr. Jack Blackley in the way of it, and his mate Adam, who now work inside in the secret understands. There's a few stories, maybe there's a few before, like Wanted and the Bourne Identities and the Bourne Supremacy and all that. And there's a few more that go along with it, but maybe there's just not ones coming out of Australia where you can see it in the basis of it, where you take it from, say, such an understanding of the reactor and the Middle Eastern organised crime to say, maybe put a message to them, a little innuendo in their mind to say, hang on a second, I think we better pull up a little bit to find out where we're going, to what's actually happening, to where they live in certain understandings as to where they think they're untouchable. Anyway, I'm Jacques Marceau. Peace. That's Mr. Jack Blackley. Welcome back, as I am Jacques Marceau. Bonjour. As we go into this, Mr. Jack Blackley, as you understand, Mr. Jack Blackley takes on the job as the assistant to Adam. And he tells Adam how he is part of it and takes him on a look back on his life, yeah? And says, well, this is how you get your job files. And this is how you become an angel with us, a Hell's Angel, in the way of it, where Mr. Jack Blackley explains to him that without our assistance to get you into the understanding, you would have been forever trapped like a labourer. But now you take on job files around the world, as he's now international traveller of sorts, doing that understandabilities where he's not just taking out certain things for himself as he does job files on himself. This is where he can rescue other people. So quick story into it, the job files is where he intervenes on people. That's where he comes into the understandings to be able to step in the way of a bullet, to say the least. And in the understandings of it, he can put himself in harm's way, knowing that he can spawn himself back into the reality of understandings. You're sort of starting to follow me? From this, his job files are unique. Say if I was to put job file on job file on job file on job file on job file, the movie itself, we talk about the movie of Mr. Jack Blackley into Adam as he begins his career. It sort of will make it a very bit dull, but in the way of it is more slip into a series like on Apple TV, to how it operates itself to keep people going. But they need to see the big motion picture fucking startup to understand how it becomes its understandings, to how it's so important to take that into the first driven reign. Like the first driven understandings needs to be fully understood. Very, very simple. So then it can go on to the understandability of, for furthermore, where it go into like Apple TV Successionals, where he pushes job files and you see the job files. I won't let it all out because you people like to get very interested. You smoke the Chiba, you shoot up the Watsy. Like tonight, not Sunday night, Saturday night, going back. Just got back from going out, right? Just scruffed me hair up. She was all messed up before and whatnot. It's about like, we look at the clock here, right? That's the actual time. It's like whatever that fucking thing said. What, 3 o'clock in the morning? And people asked me tonight, why don't you tell us about his job files? Because I was showing him, it says, very boring. I'm like, well, Apple TV, Amazon, all these people, right? Digital platforms onto entertainment. They like this. But it does need the motion understandings of the full length to be the beginning. Otherwise, you're never going to understand the hardship which Adam went through to get into the basis, to become up there, to do his jobs. So I won't let you know about too many, but that's a little heads up to for furtherments to what we're talking about with Mr. Jack Blackley. And yeah, Jacques Marceau, 3 o'clock in the morning into Sunday. I suppose it is Sunday. Well, there you go. Sunday morning, not Sunday night round the campfire naked. here I am, Sunday morning, 3 in the morning, jumpers on, just got back from heading out. Buska, Jacques Marceau, peace. If I was to use myself in a job file of understandings, it's on a sadistic religious cult. And a sadistic religious cult in Australia. And it pushes itself to where they have been playing the understandings to manipulate people's minds of understandings, to where they incorporate them with certain implants and whatnot to make them mentally deranged, and goes into some futuristic sort of technology that's not too well known of now. Like, you look into it, like, certain things do exist, like the understandings of Nathan Johnson in Helensburgh at 7 Salinger Place, to say his optic upgrade, but say people who, say, abduct people and implant them for the fun of it. And not to say the fun of it, but the financial grandeur, to where they push the financial grandeur into, say, abuse upon them. And the abuse on them, in the way of it, the abuse upon the understandings, where they take it to formulate programs and availabilities for people with disability service. But the thing is, it's only financially motivated. But the amount of people they've been, hurting, you know what I mean, that they've been doing this to, where all of a sudden the psychiatric department, the psychiatric hospital, whether it be Kenmore State or Rozelle up in Sydney, start get inundated with people. They're not the kind of people who you would think would be connected with some kind of psychotic disorder. And just like, it's not making sense. There's a bit more to this. So, in understands to Mr. Jack Blackley, Adam takes job file. And Adam takes a job file as a mentally deranged, implanted person, and actually receives some of the details they've picked up from some of the deceased to blend on in. And he just blends on in into the environment of the mentally deranged as we take this into for furthermore, you know what I mean? And it pushes it now into an understanding where his job files within certain little specific detail, where he has to go into a whorehouse, a burlesque house, to say the least, into a burlesque house. And it's where the girl, there's not one girl, there's girls within the burlesque house who are like hostages, people in that, like, people trafficking and human traffic of the burlesque house. And he has to get in there and see every single girl from this to find out the understandings on which dimension of understandings and who's willing to talk. And he finds this one girl who's willing to talk with him. And she starts talking why he's having sex with her. And he's like, so you're saying your family says I'm crazy and I'm part of the connection? And like Mr. Jack Blackley, he's told him all about it. And because he's like the boss of the situation that sends him out on job details before he actually pushes himself. He gets a bit of debriefment, you know what I mean? As you can understand, the job files are within a certain understandings, if you're familiar with the Matrix, that he was already part of the program system, if you can understand how that starts to formulate. But that just gives speculation at the end, in like a bit of a wrapping up of the series, to how he was already part of the program, but the program was actually within the artificial life itself. It's like, well, Mr. Jack Blackley's part of artificial life. Does that mean now Adam's part of artificial life? Or is he a land walker? But this is job files on all that, more speculation into how it twists and turns throughout the understandings of it. And it's pretty good. It's just a lot of push in this, push and pull, and a lot of weight to go. And yeah, it should be a pretty good episode. And series into for furthermores is like, say, where after his job file he takes them back. They don't just dissipate like you think you're clearing an angel away from life. It's where they come within the understandings, and as this where I was saying, where the job files are like cold case lookbacks and whatnot, is where the police involvement get into it on the job details. So it's sort of like a police assistance, but you have shows like Medium and all the rest of it who do their certain little understands. This one's a bit different, as you just imagine, but I told you in the way of it. Yeah. Jacques Marceau, peace. Job files out of Jack Blackley's continuation, where he's got the mental system, like the mental health factor. And it's where he's got the mental health factor going, and his location has changed. And his location is in a new location, and he's taking it on, you know. He's taken it on, and he's done it from the understandings where it goes within the Snowy Mountains, and from the Snowy Mountains it goes back up into the Heathcote job. And if you remember the Heathcote job, that's like the job that started him. And this is where the job files wrap itself up at the end of the series. See, this is like the end of series 1. This is the end of series 1. This is where it wraps them all up in one big long like conundrum, like an ending, but an extended ending. And it goes from the Snowy Mountains, where he's in the Snowy Mountains with the mental health stuff going on, and it turns around to where it goes back on to the Heathcote job, where he's injected with the snake venom, you see, yeah? And he gets the snake venom. And then from that, he's gone into the Sydney. He's gone into Sydney, right, with the snake venom. And he's gone into Sydney. And he's inside one of the strip clubs and gets the roofies on, right? Let's get the roofies on. Second job, it's getting fully punched out by the roofies. Third job is done the roofies, right? He's out cold in the club, dead as a doornail. And it goes up, it jumps up out of there. And fucking same connect. Next job, head first off the stairs, mind you, into the ground, head first, swan diving into the fucking ground, right? Swan diving into the ground head first off the stairs with the help of the security guard, mind you. And then it comes down to for furthermore, where it makes itself out of there, right? And it comes back down into the Sutherland Shire. And homeless on the streets in the Sutherland Shire. It's where he's doing a job file, working. And it's a little bit after, like a couple of weeks, like just a little bit of time. Starts a new job at the recycle centre in the way of it working along from what Mr. Jack Blackley sent at him to do. And he's got to retrieve certain information from the recycle centre. You see a lot of drugs, traffickings and whatnots. And they found that a lot of drug traffickers were putting drug money into the bins, into the recycle bins, to be taken back in to the houses as their payment. Like they would put the money in while it was outside at the gutter, and they would take it back in, you know. But see, what happens is the truck would come along and pick it up. And the truck picks up the money, right? And dumps it into the fucking recycle centre. So they lose out on all this money. And that happens a couple too many times. And see, the bloke who takes the money there, he's just the money delivery man. An absolute dumb cunt, you know what I mean? So they get the shits with the cunt and they chop him up. And part of the federal, like, in the way of it, working with Mr. Jack Blackley, Adam's in there. He has to find his body parts to come in. So he's searching through the garbage and he finds his severed head comes up the line. So he finds his severed head and he's finding money and all sorts of stuff working that job file. And it flashes out of that job file to where it goes into for furthermore and comes down into Wollongong, right? Next stop's down into Wollongong. And it's not just Wollongong. It's Wollongong into Wollongong. And then it goes into for furthermore where it comes down in the snowy mountains to where it comes into Bombala for the bike show. Because they find out the drugs and whatnots has got to do with the bikies and all that stuff. So they're at the Bombala the Big Jack bike show at Bombala, right? And it comes into for furthermore where it turns around and they got AC/DC pumping that Big Jack AC/DC song at the Big Jack Bombala bike run. And it pumps back up into Wollongong. And the bloke, that Adam bloke, he's hooked up in this fucking group home, right? And it's like a group home for disadvantaged hopeless, like a homeless shelter, but for retards as well, like, in the way of it. And he's watching the fucking idiot box and he sees the file. Mr. Jack Blackley gives him a bit of reassurance because it's a pretty treacherous place that when it gets going. And he shows him like the concrete driveway to where in the videography it's a pavers. And he's like, pavers. Like, you know what I mean? It'll be fine. Nothing to worry about. And he susses out the building. He has to sweep the building in that one at the homeless shelter. So he's going room to room and sussing out through the windows. And he's seeing naked chicks walking around with big ass titties flopping around and all these other bitches, like fucking all sorts of shit. But he finds key evidence, right? And when we say key evidence, go back to that Keys cunt from one of the job files from that Black Widows of Wollongong. See, the Black Widow murderers that killed the understanders into how Mr. Jack Blackley becomes that, telling Adam, and it goes as his keys to where he's come on to another understandings of this other job file, and it's where these fucking Keys, in the way of it, has had a baby with this poor high school kid, and the high school kid's got a job with the CFMEU, and he's got the work insurance, right, for the life insurance. So that Keys cunt couldn't help itself because it just got away with knocking its dad on the head in Wollongong. And like, long story short, they knocked their dad and they got called the Black Widow murderers because they did it for the insurance money. And then it comes down to for furthermore, where it merged itself out of there, and he's got the key evidence in his esky, right, out of Paddy's place or whatever it was called, the Desperate Hopeless shelter, this Adam, and Adam's out of there, he's got this ring, right, he finds his precious ring, and he's like, oh, you stupid slut. That's what he said when he looked at the ring. You stupid slut. Because he pulls the ring up and it's got KEP written on there, like this light has got BIC. The ring has KEP. And he's like, you stupid slut. Like in the way a Lord of the Rings goes, my precious. And it's fucking hysterical. It's a funny bit of the story. And then it goes into for furthermore, where he's got the esky, right? He's got the esky, and the esky's just down there, right, where I'm pointing with my finger. And it's on top of the footy bag. And the footy bag's out of the recycle centre. And in the footy bag is the Havianas, and they're out of the Paddy's place. And the esky on top with the ring, the KEP, that was at the Paddy's place, that's in the esky. right? Goes on for furthermore, the actual DNA tested proof to where you can test this, because I took the bed sheets and I swept down the dust off the tops and all the sides, and I locked it in the esky, and I haven't opened the esky since. I'm very serious. I tape the esky up around the outside, tape and tape and tape, so it can't break the seal, because that's the thing with that. You got to lock it off, otherwise it could get contaminated. And goes into for furthermore, where it goes from Wollongong, right, takes a job file up in Newcastle, where it merges in the Australian series of merging around, goes to Newcastle to a group home, and it's this fucking Italian cunt, right, and he's knocking these dudes on the head who are staying at his group home. There must be about 50 fucking lads at his group home. Like, no shit, 50 lads at his group home, and they're all staying there, right? Next thing you know, Adam's fucking got the armed forces there and the air forces circulating in the sky, right? There's a ghetto bird up in the sky. There's fucking armed cadets inside the place. Next thing you know, Adam's like, my fucking job is done, right? Fucking see you later, whatever they had to do in that place. Because that one was so full on with Mr. Jack Blackley in charge of that one for what was going on there. It was like a bit top secret. All Adam had to do in the way of it was get in there, get the door open, like Jimmy the door open, and get a position in there like a safe room. But the thing is, not to sleep in there. Just to get the room and take the fuck off as fast as you can on the first fucking bus if you have to, out the fucking gate. And then, like, anyway, from there, next job file, up on Ballina. And it's this bus driver dude who's hijacked a whole heap of prostitutes. And it's, like, got to do with all these fucking drugs, man, up there in Nimbin, and all the rest of it goes up into the Central Coast, like the high Central Coast. Nimbin drugs with this bus driver dude off a current affair with all these prostitutes and all this shit. It's hell hectic job, man. It's fucking mental for this Adam dude, Mr. Jack Blackley. And then all the way after that comes all the way down into a place of greatness, Cooma. And as I say, from Cooma, say Canberra, but Canberra, Cooma, it's like Canberra in the way of it, where I am now, 1 degree, just into Canberra. So I'm now chilling in Canberra at this job file I'm on now in Canberra, where I'm working this supermarket gig. And the supermarket gig has been going for a couple of years now. Got me shit together. Everyone's pretty cool with me. They locked it in and they're like, oh, you work at the supermarket. You're like Jacko the janitor, I call myself. And yeah, working at the supermarket. And that's a few more job files into where we're up to. I go on into depth. If you take me into it fucking personally, I could probably tell you over a few beers and whatnot to write down some more stuff without just spewing it out to the camera, you know what I mean? Like, it's just a bit of a flashback, as late at night I've been tossing and ejaculating everywhere, and, you know, some people toss and turn in the bed. Me, I just toss and ejaculate. That's it, mate. No fucking worry about turning. Say talk their shit. Just toss it off like a man possessed. Get the fucking gear out after it, mate. Have a fucking smoko. And then hit the fucking fart sack. I got to get up in about, well, what time is it now? It's fucking 2 in the morning. I got to get up at 5, so they'll give me 3 hours sleep. And I'll get into work and smash that place up. And yeah, that's me fucking situation. There's a bit more to it in the Canberra job, right? Canberra, yes. There's a bit of a job going on with his job files and the rest of it. But it's a bit of a secret because it sort of slips away from where it just goes into the bus driver and all these. I don't want to let it all out. I want someone to talk with. Maybe they come talk to me about this job file in the Canberra Yass, and I tell them about the last job at the supermarket gig, as they're like Big Jack, Big Pretender. It's like the Pretender series, the TV series. It's what we talk about. Anyway, heads up on that shit. Should be coming out fresh pretty soon. Not bad. Anyway, peace. There's a bit more too, like, there is that bit about the labour hire. I almost forgot. There is that labour hire bit before the like at the recycle centre where he's got to find the severed head. Just before the severed head, there's a whole bit about labour hire Australia, and it's like all the touring visas, and it goes into a bit where like all these visa workers are underneath this house and they get crushed underneath this house. It's pretty fucking hectic, but anyway, that's a bit more into it, but we can talk about this and expand it and all that, so yeah. Someone hit me up, I'm pretty bored, mate. Susie, bloody my Susie, you know my Susie, my fucking Uzi, my Susie, she's great, but she doesn't really care too much. She's always just, she does her own stuff. Maybe like a pen, like, fuck. Anyway, all good. Jacques Marceau, peace.
Bonjour, je m'appelle Jacques Marceau, parlez-vous anglais? Hello. Another job file, Jack Blackley, Mr. Jack Blackley, in Understand his job file, as his mate Adam goes in reconnaissance. This is where his mate Adam goes into reconnaissance upon certain things like the underground raves of Sydney, Melbourne, Australia, in through the world, as let's just say how people's psychotic disorder all of a sudden isn't psychotic. It is where they call the party DEFCON. And people are like, that's an interesting name. Sort of means like DEFCON 1, DEFCON 2. It's a military terminology for layman's terms and stupid people out there. And you're thinking, what's this got to do with me? And it's like, well, Mr. Adam, who took on the job file, this is where it gets interesting. You listen to this little tale on a job file, come to terminologies in a little bit of mixology. This is a job file where their little DEFCON has just become deaf poop. To where Mr. Jack Blackley says to Adam, all right, Adam, got you back at the lab, sorted it out. Most of the other job files went well, yeah. Now this one, you're getting into the underground raves. Techno Party Central. This is where people were turning up at, say, psychiatric centres, and they didn't really have disorders. They didn't really have disorders, right? Turning up at psychiatric centres. And it's like, what sort of signal is it? The signal in their mind, like implant, little implant in the side of their fucking head. And without swearing, like, you know what I mean? Little implant. And they're like, how could this even work? Now, long story short, as Mr. Jack Blackley walks Adam through it, he says, now, Adam, they have frequencies for the emergency hotline. You know what I mean? The emergency number. You'll be out in the middle of the bush, in Antarctica, wherever. You got no reception. There's still a signal. There's still a receptive number you can call. An emergency line, yeah? Very protective number. Now, understand, for DEFCON, in the understandability of the endings of the world, mind you, there are certain numbers given out to officials. And certain officials and certain military members. And these numbers have been jeopardized, Adam, says Mr. Jack Blackley. They have been stolen. Because there is no Armageddon of this. There is no ending of the world at the moment. It's just like the emergency hotline, as they say, stay on to the frequency of the radio when it does bleep up that certain number. It's just where it goes into understandable indifference. They will never cotton on to it. We will have these people in full conversation and like they're absolute. This is what Mr. Jack Blackley says to Adam. He goes, the people who were doing this against the baddies, because the baddies in it, they believe these people are scumbags. They're nothing. They're no hopers of society, right? You with me? He's like, they're no hopers of society. So in the way of it, we get you in there. you're getting an implant onto one of these numbers, one of these frequency numbers for the emergency hotline, for like Armageddon, the DEFCON, one of the DEFCON numbers implanted into you. So you're going to be a bit disturbed, a little bit like psychosis, but maybe without sort of like the actual psychosis. You understand? That's a little bit of a heads up. Mr. Jack Blackley explains to Adam, he shows him a debriefing, a videography, like the induction at the job site. And he shows him the induction. And he's like walking him through it, how to play the cards properly. Because he's like, you're going to go to a psychiatric centre and all this other stuff and meet all these other people. You got to get in there. We need faces, we need details, and we need all this stuff. So yeah, he does all that. He gets in, he does the mental health stuff, goes in for furthermore, does his job files for the frequencies. Mind you, he's got this little device. He's got this little frequency scanner, little device like this, right? And he's scanning these people right up to their head. And he's picking up these frequencies. It's like, righto, you're on board. I got your fucking number. Call you job file 7. He goes all the way through it, every single one of them. It's a big pandemic. A lot of people getting infected. I say infected, but infliction. See, I'm ethnic. I'm French, Australian, Jacques Marceau. I'm an ethnic. So my English is a bit broken. Always will be. It's not like, you know, it's not trying to put on an act or anything with me. It's just how I am. And maybe not like full on, like crazy, but like ethnic, but that's just how my voice is. So back onto the story, if why people get a bit confused about my voice. They go into it, and let's just say old Adam gets a bit of a situation at hand where his job files for the DEFCON at the rave party see him into an overdose. But it's not a regular overdose. See, it's where he's buying this drugs off these people at the party to get more and like further into the detail. And they tried to roofie him with some kind of baited poison. They tried to bait him with some poison. You know what I'm saying? They literally tried to bait him. It's like they were putting around poisonous ecstasies and people like, oh, we need pill testers. Yeah, it's because these people are putting them out there to kill people. Absolute atrocities. There's just no other word for it. Murderers. Murderers. That's all there is to it, mate. They're just looking to knock people off like a serial killer. And they roofie Adam and he ends up back in the laboratory. But he gets enough information to send out the detail for where Mr. Jack Blackley sends it from Adam. And that sort of saves the day in the way of a job file. It's a bit of an episode, half an hour episode into Mr. Jack Blackley for furthermore. It's a good little episode about the rave parties and its DEFCON number and the frequency. It's sort of like, you'd think these people are psychotic, but he's not. He's not psychotic at all. Straight as an arrow, mate. Up and down. Regular person. Black and white. But when it come to it, this is what the job file had to be done for. This is a fictional story, mate. Fictional story for all those pill-popping drug smokers and the injectors and all that stuff. They just need to calm down. My story's a bit hectic, but maybe you can't keep up. Maybe it's affected you, but like coincidence aside, it's not meant to harm people. It's just a story I put together for job file Mr. Jack Blackley. If you go back onto the series, you'll see the presentation from the start to how Adam gets involved, and yeah, the stories and the job files is coming to a series. But anyway, Jacques Marceau, peace. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back. Jacques Marceau, bonjour. As we talk it up now as Mr. Jack Blackley's Adam. It's been sent out now in a reconnaissance of sorts within the automotive scene. This is where Adam is being debriefed by Mr. Jack Blackley in a quick summary of how do you like driving? How do you like driving fast? and is just sent straight into the realm of an Australian street driver. Understandably, as it pumps itself up, you're probably thinking the high life, the big, bright, sparkling cars, the greatness of the gifts of God's gloriful automotive world. But no, this is about someone within raw talent of understandings, to say the least. Raw talent of success as they drive themselves for furthermore. Slow and steady as they build themselves up. Starting out as a young person, to say the least. This person that Adam is sent to say go to, let's just call him Brett. And he's going to be sent to this Brett job file, and you go into it that his raw talent of understandings keeps him gifted as he builds himself up along the line. And he's starting to get a bit of street cred from people around the area who understandably know what it's like in the way of it to build himself up. And let's just say as Adam's going through it, and let's just say he's got a bit of misadventure in him, where this Brett has gotten a bit excited and takes Mr. Adam on a car theft racketeer, to say the least. He gets into the car theft, say he boosts about 5 cars. And the thing is, he's not stripping the parts and selling them off. He's doing it so he can learn how to drive. Learn how to drive like an absolute beast. As you push it into the understandability of it, you take it a bit further, and certain incidents of occurrence come up where there's a couple of long runs along the highway, good 15 minutes of high speed, off the clock for 15 minutes through these suburbs, the certain understandables. And the graphic content of it is just unbelievable. But the thing is, it gets chaotic in this, to where you're thinking this is kind of boring, it's just about street driving. Borska. These Asian lads find out about it, and they're making sports games. This is the conundrum, the kicker. They're making sports games. And in these sports games they want to make, it's where they're going to take him in the way of it. It's similar to the understandings of the movie where they take away Adam the Landwalker to try and make himself with the Middle Eastern terrorists to further their terrorism. But these street races are like some Asian propaganda. I won't get too far into it in case the smoke of the hoo-ha and inject of the what's here and you get a bit confused. But let's just say an organisation of sorts trying to make cheap sports games and get the footage from this Brett. And let's just say after his boost and a couple of long runs on the highway, he goes through one car. He's just a red P-plater. He's only young. And let's just say they take him in and they do their flashback to get his sports games off him. And they send him back out. But the thing is, he's broken from that. Understand? That's why it's a bit of a conundrum. Like, you got Eaglehawk, and Eaglehawk push itself in to where they got the DEFCON dance. But this one's like the street races. And as they go into it for their sports game, it take him to where Mr. Adam has to follow it through all the way. So he plays the part where he's in the understandability of it, and he's having the retraction upon the mind from the occurrence of suggestibility. And it take him into it where his retraction, his release is where it gets complicated. Released back into the world itself, is now locked within the occurrence of mental health. the full broad spectrum of the mental health factor. Because from this extraction, from that, it leaves him into it where they make the sports game, and confused upon his understanding, he fights his way for it. And, yeah. Finding Clonebot 3, understandably, finding Clonebot 3 has stepped in his position as they've done the extraction onto him. This half-an-hour episode for Mr. Jack Blackley is where Clonebot 3 takes his position and re-enters the world as poor old Brett, as that Adam play, in the way of it, is left destitute on the street, hopeless, with nothing, laying dormant as a homeless man, locked within the system of the world, like a dormant shell once was, inside his mind, living a life of confusion, destitute within the hopelessness of psychotics, as he is left within the mental health practice, in that living on the street homeless, in the way of it locked within an implant upon his own central corum, the drive of the central nervous, like a program that keeps him locked within, so as hard as he fights, he can't get out of it. Yet there's many within this that they've done this to, and they start formulating within, signaling, connecting like ESPN. As he fights his way out of it, members push their way into it to break free these poor hard done-bys like this Brett, Mr. Adam play. As he lay homeless, he find him on the street, signal check, and find out who he is, bringing him back out of his stupefy. This is where they take him for furthermore to seek revenge against Clone, which has stepped in there, and the Asians who have tried to destroy his life. Quite the understandable episode. Anyway, that's 8 minutes of your time. It gets a bit interesting into it. If you like this episode, it'll come up as some good stuff. It's pretty much where they try to replace him after the extraction and leave him with nothing. There's some sort of hate crime into it, a bit of vengeful, probably boosted, like could be a little variables, like boosted their car, or in the car theft he went into when he was in there, like stole their car or their cousins, or you never know how it would operate. But plenty more into it. It's a bit of a short 30-minute saga. Another Mr. Jack Blackley, as it's called. This one can be called Boosting Brett. Boosting Brett. That's what I'd call it. I have Ravenhawk. This one's called Boosting Brett. Anyway, I'm Jacques Marceau. Peace. Oh, hello, Jacques Marceau. Peace. Mr. Jack Blackley episode. Oh, he's got Adam back. Things are going suave. He's just pulled up a bit harsh from some of the job files. Bit rough on the get up. Correctional officer, understandably, tainted love. Correctional officer's been taken into some kind of containment of understandings where things aren't quite what they seem within the prison. Correctional officer, you take him in where certain prisoners, in the understandability of this, have decided that they are not hanging around any longer. Working in the devil arts. This is where Adam slips in. He's got to get in on the correctional job to see this shit, to try and intercept, to see how it begin from the start, as he's like a witness in this, but to try and put some kind of containment to why Adam's so important on the job files. People get a bit confused, like, what's he even doing there? Like, does he do anything? But say, like, they're already completed, but they need, like, reconnaissance. As I talk this back from the start, like, medium, as you have a medium in the way of a person in a story of, say, television, there's a medium. This one He's got his job files of the lab, and Mr. Jack Blackley, unfortunately, he's laying there with, like, limbless. He's just pretty much a head, like the dare gorillas. As these people get a bit confused, they don't go back on all the stories. They hear just a little bit. So I got to pep them up, Buska, back on to where we're at. Like I said, Jacques Marceau, peace. That's me, bro. Anyway, back into it. He's a correctional officer, and the cons they ain't hanging around no more. But it's not regular prison. It's a psychiatric prison for the criminally insane. And from this, worked in the dark magic. There's this con mate. He knocked his wife. He found her cheating. He's an apprentice. Worked his way up, had his own shop. Long story short, doing time, consecutive sort of stuff. Come around to where he's like, I'm not staying here any longer. So the devil arts kick in. And this is where he's like performed some incarnation of the mind to the synapse of reality. The basis of understandings, the full deliverance of everything in front of you. Be that white post, that tree over there. To give you the receptor of understandings in your mind, as this devil arts magic within this episode of Mr. Jack Blackley, you go into it, where he's delivered the understandings and changed the indifference from this, manipulated the synapse of the guards to overpower their mind. He's been using the other inmates to manipulate it. He's been using the other inmates to mix it up and get powerful to where he can pretty much walk out the front door. This is where he turns around and he's dabbling in the creation of talking. And he's mixed up a mixology. And he's talking and these guards is like, blah, blah, blah. It's like a little nursery rhyme like, Frère Jacques, Frère Jacques. It's getting stuck in his mind. And the guard's getting confused and he's like after it. And they've been in there for a long time. Long story short, Buska. They're walking out the front flipping door. They overpowered the mind, used the synapse of receivership, the receptance of understandings, to give you the cognitive understandings. Like if you're understanding with IP on the computer to create games, you must have factual data to put in the basis of it. It's sort of like that, but in the actual life, not artificial life like computer and whatnot, the actual life. Long story short, guards stupefied. These guys walk straight out the front doors. This is where it gets a little bit difficult, to say the least. Is what happens after this gets a little bit interesting. Back at ya. Where he's escaped the prison. Boss! This is where criminally, mentally deranged from the psychiatric prison for the delusional and all the yada yada. Don't know too much. Like to be a guard. Fictitious story. Might help. He's riding. He's leaving. As he leaves the prison, into it, he's based in this town. And he see an art studio. Now he's overpowering these people, pretty much staying invisible to the community, these convicts as they escape the prison. And he's noticed this art shop. Now this is the con bit. This is the con catch to why it's a twisted tale of development in the way where it turns a bit tragic in a bit of relativity of coincidental. See, in the prison, the convicts are being put into the arts. And they're sitting there doing the paintings and whatnot. The Picassos, the Rembrandts, yada yada, you know what I'm saying? And they're doing identical replicas. And they notice this art shop, these convicts who escaped the prison. And they're like, there's our artwork. We did that. Concatch 21 sees the price tag, mate, the money. That brick's got like $3,500 on, say, a Mona Lisa replica, identical to the fact. And he's like, the convict's gone a bit wild from this. He gets a bit haywire. He's like, OMG. So, into it, he turns around and he's like, well, these guards are to blame for this. So things take a hateful twist. And this is where the criminally insane, as Adam's come into the part to join onto the crew, this is how we see the inside of Understandings to their escape and within the jail and all the rest of it to the correctional officer that get bamboozled by the mind. And he turn around to where he take a vengeful hate for the guard. So he tracked down the guard and he knocks the guard. But in that, there gets a bit speculation that gets a bit wild into it. And yeah, catching him, that's where it gets down to the business. Adam taking the job file with Mr. Jack Blackley catches him. But not just regular catches him like bees within the containment. It's like speculation to who and what. But that's just like how he does it. So that's like another mystery episode of the bamboozlement as you follow the episodes of Mr. Jack Blackley on my YouTube channel, Jacques Marceau. Anyway, that is nearly 8 minutes of your time wasted again with some garbage out of my bloody mouth. Peace, Jacques Marceau. Hope you enjoy me. See you later. What's up, guys? Welcome back. Big Jacques Marceau. Peace. Going on to Mr. Jack Blackley episode. Mr. Jack Blackley episode is to say how you start to understand he's in the laboratory at times, going back within that from the containment to take that with Mr. Jack Blackley and Adam take the job file, yeah? It's just to say you catch on to all of it. You see that he can break into the containment of the others. This is where within the story itself he can redirect himself over the top within the series to assist people like the boosting Brett and the correctional officer and say Ravenhawk in the raves and for furthermore into certain other job files. It's where he can put himself within that and say, like I said, take a bullet before, but say redirect it to get the people out of the stuck subfractious of development within the turmoil they live within and bring them back within the lab itself. It's sort of like a cyphernetical type situation to like sci-fi situation. It's pretty much bring it back in and see this come straight in with that. And is pretty much turn out of that and just like bring them back in is gonna split back and back to back, backtrack, back flack, all the way through, back to back, from the start, within that, not from the movie itself, but as you start to learn, as the debriefing goes from Mr. Jack Blackley into Adam, how he can actually be taken from this, and start to learn from that, that he's able to pretty much be or more resourceful, and the series get a bit more entertaining to say who could he be saving within this, to say give people assistance. It's a pretty good bit of it. It's just back to back. It's a quick heads up into for furthermore to add on right at the end as people get a bit what else could be coming. It's like where could this be heading, but it's sort of give it a bit more dramatics, I think. And yeah, that's where it's at. I'm Jacques Marceau, keeping it short and sweet, keeping it simple, stupids. All right, lads, Jacques Marceau, peace. Welcome back, Jacques Marceau, peace. Mr. Jack Blackley episodes into, say, Spinal Tap. This is where you look into, say, the understandings where certain people have misunderstanding circumstances where laying dormant on the street, but they're hooked within subfractious of development as a spinal tap of redevelopment to open a new light gateway passage of receivership, like from the front of your groin, like your eye, but the development, like if it was under your eye.
See, a new light passage. It's a little sci-fi type shit. Keep it real. It's long story short. There's a spinal tap. It's gone up the spine. This optic fibre cable into the brain. It's started a new light of development off your own self. It's like the quick split, the fractures, like splitting speakers, I suppose. But in the way of it, how this can be known within a bit of an interesting, understandable. This is where you find out that Mr. Jack Blackley has sent Adam out as a land walker. Now, Mr. Jack Blackley sending Adam out as a land walker is where you realise that he's not always within the lab. This is where you find out he's back out on the street itself. This is where he's going up to homeless people on the street, checking out with the signal tester and whatnot, finding out within and certain differences for spinal tap, to find out others who have been pushed within this from a certain understandable organisation of outlaw gang, to say the least. I won't get into too much detail, keep it secrets. Don't want to split too much. But like maybe bad lab workers, university students gone haywire, typed nutty professor, typed brain science psycho type Frankenstein, but in the way of it to say, see Mr. Adam being a land walker. So you just get the feel, the basis that the story's not all within sci-fi, stuck within lab type basis. Like you see Dare Gorilla type thing to steal off the fractures, but in understanding the show. But you see him on the street within that to get the feel of reality that he just get the power back onto himself. You see him walk around. It's pretty good. It'd be its own episode within or split within, like I say, where you see the understandable taking it back within, say, the sub-fractures of being able to connect within the understandables to help people out, to break into the sub-fractures to get them back to the lab, and say land walking to get them back to the lab, but within job files to get them back to the lab, which I talked about before, which I put in, and then you see that before, but where we are now. Anyway, it's a bit over 3 minutes on this split. I'm Jacques Marceau, keeping it reet. Peace. Boss, Mr. Jack Blackley, hello. Bonjour, I'm Jacques Marceau. Another job file. This is where Mr. Jack Blackley sends Adam. As we know, Adam's a young dude within this, right? This is where he's got to participate as an elderly resident of a nursing home, to say the least. This is one of them conundrums where certain speculation comes into it, where nursing homes aren't quite what they seem. As some, I won't mention names right now, organised crime syndicate thinks they can use it as a money laundering system in a way to dispose of people that they pick up and abduct, in a way to replicate, in a way keep them, if I could say, off track, but yet still on track, in a sub-psychous sleep within their sub-fractious mind. But in the way of it, they still collect their Centrelink, and replacing the residents and making new residents as they do, they collect large amounts of money. It's all to do with the money, mate. The money of these, say, syndicate members, to say the least, that Mr. Jack Blackley has sent Adam in to dissolve. And we look into these elderly people, and for the clear eye of it, you wouldn't really notice too much. If you're familiar with Jackass, the movie, and you see the way that they dress up their kids as old people to participate in certain entertainment. Yet you see in that movie, they're not down at the local welfare centre collecting hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of payments, laundering it back through their life, like within, locking them in the nursing home and laundering it back through as a money rort. You know what I mean? In Jackass, they do a bit of entertainment. They're not the ones that are just turn around and say, this episode of Mr. Jack Blackley, where you learn about how they entrap the nursing home and make it look like they're all doing good, yeah. Permanent care, stroke victims type people. The vegetables. But really, it's the money rot. Actual hostages. Trapped within the sub-fractures. Development's undertaking. Quick babushka. It goes on all the way through. You come into it with detail to take it on. And you see this. Got to take him back to the start. Mr. Jack Blackley and Adam. As is, Adam's in there. He's got to take him back to get facial recognitions. He gets them with his Oculus. Gets them with the Oculus, to say the least. Has them like a triad. If you know how triad, mafia, Japanese yakuza, you know about certain upgrades in the world. Like there's that Nathan Johnson, yeah? He's got a certain visual containment. Triads, they sort of have certain different things that makes people go, boom! Where the bloody hell are you been? So you get a bit of a confusion to talk shit anymore, to say the least. So as Mr. Adam and Mr. Jack Blackley and all the way through, you now take on this nursing home job. I think you incorporate maybe a bit of outside to follow the track back and go on the reconnaissance. Where he's headed to now, the Adam, he might be able to separate and split off into some of the breakdown unit to be like kicking doors down soon, kicking doors in and taking the arrests and pushing that part of the puzzle. It's a pretty good little episode I put together. It should keep people really interested. That's 4.5 minutes going on to nearly 5 minutes of your time. Anyway, thank you very much. Jacques Marceau, peace. Coming back, so Mr. Jack Blackley, peace. Jacques Marceau is the regular, usual guy, keeping it real. Here we have the understandings. Flat shares. Flatmates. This is a bit of a G up to flatmates.com. It's not really a shout out or a buzz or a plug. This is a heads up type of macabre in me stories of Mr. Jack Blackley. And it goes into a meat delivery man working for a major meat delivery wholesalist who delivers to most of the major large restaurants, clubs, etc. around. And he does this through the certain areas of, say, locations yet to be advised, because I don't want to be too specific in case it causes problems. People get shitty, come punch me in the face. I don't want that shit. I just want to talk my story, get it out there, be a bit sinister to talk my story. And he does this, right? He's getting flatmates, but he's the meat delivery man. And it's like things are a bit bad now. Now what he does, he's a bit of a head case. He's got the full mental condition. And what he does, he chops up the people right downstairs in his garage. At the back of his garage, he's got this big workshop area. He chops them up in their dismembers to package them up in cryo-vac bags similar to the ones that are going in the meat delivery coming from the wholesale factory. The thing is, he gets to take the van home, so he just loads them straight in there. No one's the wiser as he drops them off around the area to certain restaurants. It's quite a disturbing tale. But in the macabre of interest is where he goes back to his apartment where they were at. And because he has their dead body in the way of it. And he's doing some hectic religious type, look back type situation, saying he's looking back through their life as kind of a weird little horror. This is where he's gone and saying that their flashback is coming up on his TV. Say the flashback, but the look back from God is coming up on his TV as he starts going into psychotic delusion saying that it's playing to him as he communicate through to the dead, yet the dead body's downstairs in the garage car park. It's in this story we put together, kind of hectic to say the least, and the way it gets a bit disturbing. No one really cottons onto him in his apartment, screaming and carry on, because he's a belligerent alcoholic, and being a belligerent alcoholic in the way of it, he sort of got away with these certain little crime files, to say the least, as washing it off, saying, he's shits and giggles, a drunk guy that gets raged and pissed, and yeah, problems from the past, as people would wash it off. But actual serial killer now, responsible for about 5 disappearances from having housemates move in, as he chop them up and put them into the restaurants in cryovac bags, as he tries to look back on their dead bodies from downstairs in the car park to his own apartment, saying that he's like recording it at the same time, making entertainment. Like if they, it's kind of like a crazy, it's not like the mafia ones from, say, Boosting Bread, or crazy rave dancers with technology signals from Ravenhawk. This one, all kinds of fucked up. This poor delusional man, this one is like the look back, where it's not quite as macabre as sinister to say certain stories from the past. This one is just where this disturbed man has done this sort of stuff. Now, how it happens is, to get him busted into the actual laboratory of sorts, he has a road crash, you see. And from the road crash, they have to go back to his house, and they find the detail that the dead bodies are at the house, and the cops freak out real quick, as it's like, what's going on here? And they get the actual person into the lab. There's still brain function in that person, yeah? And says Mr. Jack Blackley's authorised the connection with Adam, and Adam's break and split connects and pairs on, then does like the ESP type, lab type, matrix type connect. I don't know, it's still yet to be formulated, but like Dare Gorillas, the music CD is a head on the stick, a head in the fucking music, whatever. It's pretty gnarly. I think this episode's pretty cool. It'll go on into for furthermore, like people say, if you say so, because I say it's pretty cool, but like hectic, macabre, should be a good horror, maybe an R18, keeping this stuff for people who like this. Got a lot of support at the moment, it's going pretty well, so big shout outs to all supporters. And where it goes, they just look back on what he's done, and it goes on a look back. There's not much they can do to save the people he's killed, but say to find out all the details of who he's done it to and how he's done it. And it goes into a bit of a story about like a cold case of how he done it to who he done it with Adam and Mr. Jack Blackley taking the realm. But yeah, that's a couple of minutes, 6 minutes of your time. Jacques Marceau, I think we'll call this episode Meat Works Horror. Like Meat Works Horror. All right, peace. As Mr. Jack Blackley's Adam's reconnaissance into Cooma continued, it goes where he works a job file at the supermarket. And in understandings, it's about some of the store worker. A management division of sorts was in mixed up and mixologies with the music. And this is where it gets a bit tragic for the part that Adam comes to play in understandings. It's sort of like they wanted to make the music, yeah, for, say, the busking competition, to say that they play in the snowy Monaro. As it mixes out in this little thrilling macabre, this is where it bounces off the walls into the end of Mullock Street, to these deadly little dirty apartments, which are housing development style scumbag properties. And from this, in saying that, this is where it gets a bit tragic, with the connections into the Calabrian mafia here in the snowy Monaro. Say the Mondello and all the rest of all the fucking lot of them, you know what I mean?
And it go into like the Barbarella. I just won't cut short. I just do them all. And it go into it. And it's where they sit from Hawkins Street over the other side of the creek, mind you, with a telescopic lens from some kind of furtherment for the actual retractable look back from within the synapse of the mind as they try to play their own laboratory here in the Snowy Monaro. This is where it gets a bit tragic. They try to make their own laboratory, but understandably they have parts of understandings, like the view, to know how long the telescope has to zoom from, say, across at Hawkins over into the tragics of the dirty little housing commission flats of Moolach. Furthermore, if you know the location of sorts, and you sort of get the grips into look backs on stuff, these are actual places, it'll show you that that is just enough to understand that within the right view, you can actually get the microscopic microfilm, to get the microfilm look back of understandability for what sort of retractable it's needed to do that sort of thing into the open mind of understandings as you're killing a person, mind you, killing them, trying to make some kind of DVD that they think they're going to sit there and watch their DVD. This is from the Middle Eastern terrorist type thing into, say, the Italian Calabrian mafia style. This is where it gets really, like, in this area, as they go into the radio station of Commissioner Street. This is where it shows the mafia in some kind of modified spasticness, where they tried this for furtherment onto the whole town, where they were just sitting back, sucking it up, sucking it like a bunch of suckers for no, like, innocence. But then we thought about it, and it's because of the bloody prison. The jail, mate, the jail. Because they wanted to get connections to the jail and say how they were still taking care of business for some of the inmates that are in there, like their buddy old pals. So they're doing these retractables for the microfilm from Hawkins into Mullock at the dirty building apartments of the housing development, mind you, and the people. Because they're still lucidly tripping within this retractive look back. It's like they cut their throat. They're dying at the same time. And they would run from within the apartment all the way as it go out into the back field. The empty field of Moolach on the way down to the dog pound, mind you. And they would die out into the yard as they would freak out. The panic sets in as like the expresses of getting choked out unconscious for those people who understand taking out the MMA titles into knowing about cauliflower ears and for furtherments. That expresses adrenaline. But we found they were trying to create the drugs as well for their little drug traffics. And then they go into a bit more. This is where they die in the field from out the back of their tragic little apartment, where it was oh so quiet to do it to them, no one really cottoning on the wiser, as they would mess them up with some of the connectionals that they needed for this fictitious story within a macabre of the mountain. Hollywood of the snow! Anyway, long story short, the body, mate, the body of these victims, wherever they're from, as they'd import them like victims or, let's say, tourists to the snowy mountains are Kosciuszko's. And as this Calabrian mafia family would work together with these junkies and all the rest of the scumbags and whoever else they could cotton into it with their music from the Commissioner Street music set up at that little studio behind the Anytime Fitness, yeah? And it go into for furthermore, with their telephone connect and all the rest of their stuff they had set up. And it goes into it as a running development to try and make themselves some kind of success story, they think. This is where the Federal's policing units come in and just said, well, as you would chop them up in the back little patio area and then take their body down into the dog pound, mind you, by foot, to say the dog pound where they take the dogs and say, understandably, when it come down to this area, back in, say, the 60s and 70s and 80s and still 90s, probably still to this day,
They don't really take the dog to the crematorium if they have to put it down to sleep, you know what I mean? They don't really worry too much. They'll just let it run off into the field, throw a ball for it, then shoot it with a rifle, you know what I mean? Pretty simple shit. And they would let it lie dead in the grass. They wouldn't worry about burying it or nothing. This is the whole thing about it. You go down there into that grass where the federal police crimes divisions are, federal forensics units have been down in there searching out for all sorts of components of understandings. Now as we do these look-backs of fictitious stories of the mountains, this is where it gets very tragic, to speak the truth. The cold-hearted reality of these people, and bring it to the light of the fucking development, without my swearing, of course. And go into it to say, as they would throw their bodies into the grass. But the thing is, they're a bit exclusive. They knew the day could come, the inevitable. So they would be a bit seclusive from this. Smashing the skulls in with a spade type of thing, like really belting into them, just smashing all the face up to really take away any of the evidence of any of that. Like to make it look like some serial killer, like a Mullick Street masochist, they would try and say, if it ever came up. Like the Mullick Street masochist that would want to be known as. As where a crime division sort of goes, well, I cut it short and maybe not let it. But then they go into it where the body parts, the forensics units and all the rest, the macabre. But to say the movies, as I say, Hollywood in the Snow, the Savoy, mate, the Savoy, both into Jindabyne and for Furtherman's Kuma. This is where it gets a bit interesting. You start to understand about their little video shop and the Better Electrical as we talk about it. And it go into the Greek mafia as you think the Greek. And you start to work out about their DVD shop in their little movies, etc., etc. And you start to look at their house and you think, the money, mate, the money. And you start to see it formulate its plot as it shuts book after book after book on these job files, mind you, in this dirty little thrilling tale of macabre mountain, as I like to say it, but that's just a bit of fictitious story. Hey, wink wink from your mate Uncle Jack. Welcome back into Understandings, Mr. Jack Blackley. This here is where Adam takes on the role of a federal police officer in order to undercover within the Delicious to play possum, to say the least. Play possum on a job file to say what sort of situations come up where certain speculations of understandings are pushed into the full audience of understandability. The understandability of the audience is where Adam steps in, sitting back, laying around, lazed out, like he was going to be the victim of police corruption. Police corruption, to say the least. Are you with me on this? For all the officers out there, all the policings of sorts, which would sit back and go, well, what kind of undercover unit coming out of, say, Goulburn, in the dog pound at Goulburn, and in the playpen, to say in the playpen, which undercover units coming out of the playpen turn around and just job file corrupt coppers? Be if not like Roger Rogerson, the Balmain Bug, etc., etc. As it goes on, dropping file on file on file, to where certain speculations come up on Delicious Adam in his delicious job working for Mr. Jack Blackley out of the lab, is where he turned around, he even get himself a criminal record, to take it so deep. In a criminal record of sorts is where he's in the actual station itself. Fingerprints, photos, glorious, sexy photos. And then jetting out of the understandability into the ordinance of the corrupt police, like the Artful Dodger and the Balmain Bug, to say the least. Like it was 1970s. And then, just the disarray of understandings. Adam taking this all the way through in ordinance. Up and up and up. As these certain speculations lead to misconceptive construction to where he's in the dog play pen and one officer, this is what gets the understandable's attention, Mr. Adam, because this is where he's gone real deep. I mean, like balls deep. It's like balls deep on Mr. Adam. That's probably something you don't want to just go straight on with. But then, like to say, an officer has pulled him up on a RBT. And it's an Australian, like, he's got him on an RBT. And he's took him back for his breath test is a 0.76. Ah, something like that, 0.076. You never know what kind of rocket fuel he could get up to was 700. But anyway, she get him back in the station. She's like, "Oi, sweetheart, what the fuck is this mischief?" And in his stupefy, he's so balls deep, he's forgotten all about his case file. Sort of like amnesia, but within like an actual like mind blank. It's like the MI6, or say MIB, Men in Black. That's the revenue for my connectionals into, say, a little blip. Look here. And everyone look in here at the light as she mind blank everyone. This is where she reminds him, "Hello, mate. What have we here?" And to push his button even more to get him like the finger up the butt, burning ring of fire, as they say, screaming off into the distance like Wile E. Coyote. Oh! They go on, right? Where it goes to the courts. Inside the courtroom. And the judge is like, "Whoa!" On the drink drive, there's no charge, no conviction. And on the understandings that certain matters have came up before the courts of certain speculations within certain understandings, which was pushed by the officers that maybe it's organised crime. Organised crime. And in what they say, he come on, that he punches in the mind. It's like inserting the drive of receivership, which give him the package of containment to take on the full ability for what's needed in the undercover, to take on the corrupt police, to push it back, reverse the role, slip the Mickey like he'd been playing possum the whole time. Oh, it's a good one, this one. This one's where the actual corrupt police had none the wiser. None of them. Except for one delicious, beautiful specimen who remembered a little wives' tale she heard about the mischief maker. Staying on the case as to give a reconnaissance of sorts, to say Mr. Jack Blackley had to push in another connect because he knew this one was so intense that Adam was going to need an assistive a partner in crime. A beautiful, delicious partner in crime. Bella Marara. A beautiful girl of sorts. A woman. A beautiful, full... Can't say it any other way. A beautiful woman to help. Also an officer. And he come into the understandability where one day he's going for a walk. And he's on the fucking job. And in the file to how it actuates into this bit of entertainment is where he's taking his walk to the supermarket. And along the walk, in a huff of a puff, he'd have jeopardised himself in his stupefy, not coming clear enough, fracking out, like flacking out, like the flack, taking too much flack, too much heat on the situation. And when he walked to the supermarket, just dawdling up to the supermarket, like listening to the headphones, this car's like, get in! And pulls him up and reminds him about duty of care, service, ability, that in understandings like within the notations of the handbook, remembering the understandable, it is always, if not be, on duty or off duty, upon the startups, to say the least. But before I waste everyone's time, we're 9.5 minutes in. Let's just push this to where she takes him into a little yada, little drive of a style and disappear out. And that was the ending. Leaving everything behind. The ending of how it actuated. Because she knew not even her self with Adam from Mr. Jack Blackley could do it themselves. Their positions of ordnance burnt. So they jet out of there hard. And that's where military, for how equipped these police in their corruptive police are, literally needs the military in platoon-styled approach, mind you, with operative gunfire of automatic gunfire to get in there and break the containment of their lockdown situation where they weren't willing to participate or parlay to be captured for the corruption and all the heinous crimes they'd gotten up to and everything in their delicious of understandings. So it's a bit of a quick throwdown into like say a brouhaha to a little upgrade in a little job file on Mr. Jack Blackley for his Adam. And now his connective Amanda. Adam and Amanda. So anyway, I'm Jacques Marceau. Peace. Mr. Jack Blackley. Oh, welcome back, Mr. Jack Blackley. He's in reconnaissance, back in that from furtherments with the federal police job files where the undercover version went all cray, yeah? This is where it comes into Numerella. And this is where Adam, the job file from Mr. Jack Blackley with the military, is where they swarm in on cannabis cropper. Well, cannabis cropper extreme. Now, some people think, well, one or two little things like a plan or whatever's going to help you, maybe, yeah, whatever. These guys, well, out of the box, spectaculars, mind you. All out delusionalists. As they're planned out exercise like they think a military ordnance is where Buska this weekend, for what it is now, from that say Monday the 9th. Yeah, Monday was the 9th. And we have a look as we go into here because we can quickly pull it up. And we go, well, Monday the 9th. And then we go, today being the 13th. Today's the 13th, Friday. Friday the 13th. Friday the 13th, what a fucked up day to fuck your jive. These crop busters. And I say crop buster. Friday the 13th, as they're all out there on the pick. Right now, as we speak, Numarella, the campground, and for furthermore, the Old Badger River. Or it's the Old Badger Creek. It might have been a river once, who'd know. Long story short, going to Numarella River. And the crop, they're picking the crop. And they're trimming and cropping and they got the mower to mulch up the shadies and all the rest of the fucking gear they do in their little bust up. And this fucking Campbell, he's pissed off so many people. This is the reason that the job file's on. Colin Campbell, the fuckwit, has pissed that many fucking people off that they're just like, fuck you and fuck your fucking crop. They just dissolve it straight up to the world. As you sit there to pluck it all off, trim her all up, send her all out in the packed up, wrapped up, sealed up, vacuum packed, suction packed, locked up so it can't be detected, yada yada, yeah. And then Buska. Along come Mr. Jack Blackley and his mate Adam in reconnaissance and their connection now as he's teamed up with Amanda from the file before with the federal police. And now this is where their little crop buster is like getting a little bit dusty. So this is where this little job file gets a little bit interesting. See, the way they play it out, they're trying to run the gauntlet. Now most people know, you don't run the gauntlet against juggernauts of the game. You just don't run the gauntlet against juggernauts of the game this deep. Like this balls deep in the game, you don't run the juggernauts. Like to try and run some kind of shit, it ain't gonna happen. As they're all sitting there laughing it up, la la la, smoking their brains out. Anyway, Friday the 13th, 3 minutes into this story. The military, this is how it plays out. The military, teamed units, aerial command, SAS type sitch. As on top of that, the General Land Patrol. This is like what was camped at the race course. Quick stick set ups the race course, drop in, drop out. SAS platoons in the Old Badger River. As to say, Numarella, Old Badger Creek. To follow Old Badger Creek up the Snake Trail. To see the trail of the little drop-offs. The little goat track, to say the least. And the amount of the quantity we talk about. As they're going to fold, wrap, lock and pack and lock and stack and lock it up and back it back to wherever the fuck they're coming from in the amount of mass people coming in for their oh-so-great holiday to Numarella. Whoa! In the snowy Monaro, headed towards Queanbeyan as they all fuck off to wherever they go to. As certain people have pissed people off that much, Mr. Jack Blackley's just sending Adam straight on it. That's just how it's going to rock and roll all the way through to the fucking end. Every one of these cunts getting bombarded with fuck off, out of here, we're full. And we don't want to hear their fucking shit, you know? So that's how it's playing out. Uploading directs, straight up connects, SAS, police and military as they try to play it out with their bullshit little talk. While we use Zenly, Connective Zenly tracker on people there right now off their tracker. As we track them all off their own tracker. You know what I mean? Smart technology. Well, doesn't it come in handy? Long story short, that's a quick 5, going into probably 6 minutes of a Mr. Jack Blackley file against a little bit of cannabis in a runoff to, say, certain areas. Maybe disclose it in the job file. It's like spice it up in the Hollywood type of shit. And maybe be like, oh, It's not Numerella River, it's Numeralla River, as they're all cannabis smoking dope heads, to see how far he goes into it, to see if he wants to fuck with this. We'll just maybe keep it short and sweet to see which fucking direction he wants to go right now. Talking the fucking shit to these people. You know, he wants to fuck with Big Jack. That's the Bombala, the bike show. That's where he's pissed people off. This Colin Campbell I speak of. So as it now bends it back over the Numerella and the old Badger Creek. Follow the goat track as they bring it in. And then, long story short, every plant they pick, every trim they make, for every bag in that the campers wrapping and stacking and packing, well, how's this going to pan out? See which way it folds in the undeveloping tales of a Mr. Jack Blackley. Anyway, I'm Jacques Marceau. Peace. 7 minutes of your time.
Mr. Jack Blackley, welcome back. Now, understandable advancements. Well, as you see, it's stepping up a little bit. You can't expect Mr. Jack Blackley's Adam to come straight on into the federal police, or say the connections into the furtherance of organised chaos. Good to say organised chaos, the shit fights of the world. Where Mr. Adam, and Mr. Jack Blackley's Adam is headed to, is where he's taking for furtherance to travel into the ASIO in the Australian Security Forces, the Secret Service. This is where Amanda has given Adam a connection after in that it wasn't disclosed. I don't disclose all the job file for the episodes I put together. Just bits and pieces, like you have a look at, say, the last one, connected with the crop. For Friday the 13th, the pick and all this, to pick the crop and that. That's only a fallacy, right? People took it a bit too far, but learning how I said the person, the unsub of question, was concerned in the understandings of religious, and I say like religious to say the Middle Eastern, as they speak of their hashish. They can't get it here in Australia. They find it really hard. So big crops like that, they pay their way. They really pay their way. That's why I said, like, to learn about it properly, big crops like that really pave the way to learn what we're talking about. As a see a lot of, like, you're starting to understand. I didn't talk it all up, but that's where it go into, like, put a little dent in the understanding. That's a little thigh slapper. So I won't talk it all, but you can sort of picture where I'm talking as it involved that but anyway, Amanda is getting jacked for further and for further, as the jobs are going so well. Now, this is where he's getting introduced to the Secret Service. Understand, he's getting introduced to ASIO, the Secret Service. This is where he's chasing the tail from the crop, to say the Middle Eastern into their hashish. This is where he's furthered in the Secret Services a big setup of understandings. This is a mad job file. This one is where the people are so angry at it, they set up the understandability of, say, a little protest to get as many people as they can to distract these people, to get as many of their faces turning around, because it's really hard to get their faces. They're so disclosed, these people, but they're like, this is the thing. So we get these little protests and we see their faces, we see them get upset and whatnot. This is where Adams and Amanda has got Adam into the Secret Service to get their faces. As it go into, for furthermore, Mr. Jack Blackley's very happy with this, to say the least. Now, I'm not going to disclose all of it, and go into a little bit more where Mr. Adam and his Amanda working coincide as from federal into For Furthermore with Secret Service from Mr. Jack Blackley, stepping up a little bit further, to say the least, into, say, Working Task Force, upon episodes that will amaze your interest into Australian culture. A little bit more than, say, Blue Heelers, to say the least, or the old schools. Like, we can't give up on the old schools. They're the juggernauts. They're the real juggernauts of the game. But this new stuff I talk about, mate, where I talking to, say, this crime series, it sort of has its way about it. It's a bit of peaceful. Understands when you get the drift of it and take it on, to see him merge to what I'm putting up now, to keep it real. Anyway, that's a quick 4.5 minutes of me time. Telling you what's up. I'm Jacques Marceau. Adios, amigo. Mr. Jack Blackley, and welcome back to Jacques Marceau as I am. And into For Furthermore to the laboratory. This is where it gets a bit pear-shaped. The all-out, cataclysmic, spine-tingling thriller at the end. Crazed. Usual plays itself out, you know how it is. You know what I'm saying, guys. The crazed out lab worker, doctor, professor, it has a bit of a... It's like when you're at work itself and you're like, well, the first one you think's going to go on a killing spree this week. And unfortunately, at Mr. Jack Blackley's laboratory, and where Adam jumps out to go be the land walker, bum, 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 a cataclysmic ending as it goes into a spine-tingling end of such greatness upon certain details. Now, I'm not too far into it. I'm going to play it down a bit more. I just thought I'd get it down, give a bit of a heads up, because it was on my mind, and I'm like, if I leave it too long, as per usual, it'll fucking slip my biscuit, and I'll just be like, well, I'm back to do something different, and I'll go, like, chasing out, doing something strange, or doing something different, you know what I mean? So Mr. Jack Blackley's into some kind of epic thriller as we work on different details. And it'll go into For Furthermore where either the nutty professor type thing has a bit of a meltdown at work, or in continuation of containment to where spine-tingling understandances of, say, some kind of terrorism or some kind of hijacking or some kind of connective attributions, like a face sucker joining on and breaking its way in to the containment where Mr. Jack Blackley is. And this is from where, like, the alternative is where the Middle Eastern terrorists already destroyed the lab and took him in the first place, to where land walker Jacques got him back but joined the lab at the same time, showing that he was already part of the lab. That was the ultimate part, which will show the understandings that maybe it's just that it revolves over and becomes the circle of life, to say the least. Like a circle of life. As it will go out into, say, the time of understandings, to say how much time basis is on the relativity of understandings, the basis of this artificial environment, like that of the Big Bang Theory itself. And to say to where a new continuation or a new quantum basis of, say, perpetual divide, the basis of the theory of development, like the Da Vinci Code of sorts, and like the mass created into an understandability, and maybe in that For Furthermore for the ultimate continuation, to where it just is great, to where it is a spine thrilling, to like shivers down the spine. This is great. They haven't just moved as series 2, the containment lab gets destroyed, but coming into it, if it hadn't happened, they couldn't have done the continuation or turnover for what I just talked about. I'm sure we're not all dummies and have to repeat it 25 times, but unfortunately I've been growing up with that sort of thing.
And so people are limited to my understanding. So I have to, well, they're like, yeah, what are you George abbing about? I'm like, well, smart tech can understand where we're at now, and say artificial environments are now for furthered, and it's not just poor old Mr. Jack Blackley in the lab with old Adam and Amanda. This might got a little bit more sexy. And I say everything's sexy. The whole world to me is sexy. So like, the whole universe is sexy. Like, I mean, like, it's going to be off the charts. Some of my whole work is like the catalog, the caliber of how it puts together. Sometimes it gets a bit disturbed. People get a bit confused. They smoke the Watsy or they inject the Wawi, and you don't want that. But to say the continuation, say maybe they'll meet again in an alternate divide. You never even know, they may have deja vu, is what I'm talking about. To say the starting first episode, as I move on now into furthering Mr. Jack Blackley, as they've now gone into the first episode, deja vu, to explain how it all blew up in the end of the final episode of season 1. So we're going to season 2, first episode, Deja Vu, where they may meet again, this time without certain job file inflictions. A happy, prosperous, but in a whole different understandability. Still files of understandings, job files to say the least, but these ones more gifted files to say, where you watch TV like that, you watch his TV, and you see some of the stuff they put on is just like, they think they're good, but it's not really that good. So yeah, that's where we're at. Deja Vu is a series will fulfill itself like a reality TV basis. Some is a reality TV, but their reality TV really sucks. So when Deja Vu come up in the furtherments and follow the new people, because it's not just going to be Mr. Jack Blackley and Adam. You never even know, mate. They may not even exist in season 2, but how it is, they might have been remembered. They might not even have the understandings. They might have been long forgotten. But in the way of it, you never forget them. Like the juggernauts. Like the firsties, like I talk about Blue Healers and the country practice. Like you can't forget about juggernauts like Mr. Jack Blackley and Adam as it goes into season 2 with Deja Vu. He understands of that. I'm going to have to keep you up to date on that. Stay tuned. To say g'day, marceau, peace. Mr. Jack Blackley has just now gone into season 2. The first episodes of season 2, yeah, is Deja Vu. Now in this is where she wrapped up out of season 1. And we had the cataclysmic ending of the broken science as it blew itself up. But in that, you got to think to yourself, a little heads up. I won't put words in your mouth, I'll keep it clean, so I'll keep off that. Well, just like to say what you'd think could possibly be a reason as I go into Deja Vu. Now understandably, Mr. Jack Blackley and Adam himself, if Mr. Jack Blackley even exists, for Mr. Adam, if you can work that out, as Mr. Adam is now in a new containment, a sort of driven divide of his lusts, his love, his passions, his hobbies, his interests, his likes, the things he most excel, to be domination all the way through, to have the best run all the way, as you look into, say, a certain jive of situations. Just a difference of understandings in TV. He wouldn't even know. Maybe he has a different name. His name's not Adam no more. Maybe it's nice. You never know how it plays out. In the way it works itself in the basis. So to say Deja Vu is maybe where he bumps into people and you say in like society now, say I bump into someone and say, oi, have I met you before, beautiful? You ever get the feeling that you got deja vu This could possibly be like Amanda for Mr. Adam, as she took him and broke him from his a bit stupefy and brought him into the containment, which then continued the fulfillment to excel itself. Or maybe it's not, maybe it's within the understandings of his life, of his lusts and loves, and all the way through in life itself. The Deja Vu is a good episode to bring in a bit of heart to maybe Mr. Jack Blackley never exist, was just a figment of his mind to help him understand the basis, to get him out of that strife. For when you find out the basis that there is no Mr. Jack Blackley, that's the hardest part I see. That there was no Mr. Jack Blackley. There was Adam. And the whole way through it was to give him love, to give him the support and care he needed, part of the laboratory, to say the least. Say from his infliction of understandings to where he was living his life mindlessly, but they seen potential. So there's probably a lot of people in the laboratory. So in long story short, as we're 3 minutes in, never put yourself in a position where you think you're absolutely useless. You know what I mean? Is what I say for people who fan the whole conundrum and the whole understandings of my episodes, and the movie in the start of it that gave it the basis to break into the episodes. And now, as people join in now listening to season 2, a little bit of an understanding of it anyway. I won't go into too much. I'd probably say driving in the way of it is to say the episodes he's driving. Maybe he can follow that race career now and put himself into the Daytona 500, or if he wished, or, you know, and to see that sort of stuff. It's one of them things in life where the basis give him the greatness from the life he take. But to say back as a long story, as I skip out of that sort of with a half a thought, and that's where Mr. Jack Blackley may never have existed again to help Adam all the way through. And they show in the containment of it that they were there to assist him in a heartful way. Part of the laboratory back onto that. It makes me wonder, it gets me a bit confused, like. It's a little bit sad. It sort of busted up a bit, it's slowed me up a bit now where I'm sort of falling short of my words. But now I'm just happy I got on to season 2, finished it up with what it did, and yeah, should be a good run. I'll keep posted, and not going to put it all up, and keep it to where it breaks out into, say, a alternate reality, in that of understandable reality of, like, reality TV of a new kind of understandings, to say the least. Anyway, 5:47, 48, 49, going into 6 minutes of your pleasurable listening, I'd hope. Anyway, Jacques Marceau, peace.